Okay, today I'm here with Jerry Durham, co-founder of San Francisco Sport and Spine and the founder of Rocket Conversion. Jerry's all over the place on Twitter. If you follow him on Twitter, I'm sure you hear a lot about PT and also a lot about loving and hating the San Francisco Giants. How you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Carl? How are
Um,
your Eagles?
I'm feeling good about the Eagles. They look good this year. All right, so what we're here to talk about today is a way that you can um, you can get more new patients without spending more money on marketing. But before we do that, we'll just get a little background on Jerry. So Jerry, how'd you get into private practice?
I've been a physical therapist. I'm in my 21st year, I believe. I've lost track. So somewhere about around 21. I've been practice for 12 years. Stumbled in really, and just continue to learn every single day. It doesn't go by where I'm not learning something new. So it's been 12 years of private practice.
Awesome, sounds
Do you
great.
want more?
No, no, that's good. Um, so So yeah, like I said, we're here to learn. You have a way of potentially getting more new patients without spending money on marketing. How do you do it?
Basically, number one, make sure you're answering your phone. And make sure the person answering your phone knows what to do when they answer the phone. If you do that, you're going to get more patients without spending another dime or more. It's that simple.
Okay, so you know, I know that you're tracking some of those things. Why is it important to keep track of that?
Well, I think as physical therapists, we understand very well if you measure it, you can change it. And if you don't measure something, you can't measure the change. So if I'm measuring all the phone calls that come into my office from September 1st to September 30th, I'm tracking 4 or 5 different things, then I can start to measure some change and see why people are or aren't scheduling.
So what are the like basic things that you track, like maybe just the top three?
The top three. So, well, interestingly enough, I track number one is who answers the call. Usually, you have to see if there's a pattern there.
Right.
The second thing we track is that would be important is who referred you to physical therapy.
Hmm.
Third thing is how did you come about scheduling with us for physical therapy? And then the fourth thing is if they don't schedule with you, why not? Those are the top four important things.
Gotcha. So so you said basically that people could be losing a lot of new patients on the phone. I think most people probably think that they're probably converting 100% of the people that call to patients. Like, what do you say to that?
Well, what I found after talking to hundreds or more, started with myself and then talking to hundreds of business owners, is basically we say we track the calls, and when I ask how many calls you got this month, it equals exactly the number of new patients that are on our schedule. So I say, okay, you're tracking the calls of the people who schedule with you.
Hmm.
What's happening to the calls when the people don't schedule with you? What are you collecting on those people? Because there's some famous quotes out there, but actually you have more to learn from the people who aren't scheduling with you than who are scheduling with you.
Right,
And
right.
then those extra new patients that come without spending any money called your office and hung up, and nobody asked them the right questions to get them scheduled.
Wow. So, how big of a difference does the conversation make, generally?
Well, this is interesting. Literally had this conversation with someone this week. If you're not measuring your phone calls today, and you never have, then whatever I give you is irrelevant.
Right.
Because just in a physical therapy evaluation, if I didn't measure your shoulder flexion on day one, I can't measure it 8 weeks later and say how great it is or how bad it is.
Gotcha.
So based on that, you should see So basically, you're measuring conversion. Lead conversion is what it is. So if someone calls my office, my point is they are calling to schedule physical therapy. So if I get 100 calls this month and 75 of them scheduled, my lead conversion rate is 75%. So roughly what I'm looking for, depending, there's a couple factors. Roughly you should average around 70-75% conversion rate anywhere if you're measuring it, regardless of cash or taking insurance or regardless of your practice. You should be averaging about 75%.
Gotcha. So this is really interesting. So I would expect most people think they're converting way more than that. So, it seems like if they're only converting 75% and they're, I don't know, even if they do 100 patients, just say they do 100 new patients a month, even converting one more percent, that's a big difference, right?
Yeah, I would say so. And yeah, this is interesting because again, if you're not measuring it and you just heard 75%, you're like, that's stupid. Again, if you think you're converting 100%, I will challenge anybody out there to prove that because it's not happening. But again, 75, 70, 75% is really good. So yeah, let's take the example. Let's say an average revenue per new patient is $1,000 for you. So would you be happy? No. Sorry.
It's all right.
Bro, get in here. Ah, so we could.
Yeah, I can cut.
So if your revenue per case is $1,000, and I could get you 2 new patients just by teaching you or talking to you, getting you to track those calls and have a conversation, that's $2,000 a month in revenue. That's $24,000 a year. I
Yeah.
would like to find anybody in any state of the union who would not take $24,000 more dollars in revenue a year.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. So this is really interesting. Like, I'm curious how did you get started? Like, what made you decide to start tracking this, and then how did you realize that it was important?
The day, I'll never forget this. I can't tell you how long ago it was. I'm a poor historian when it comes to time, but I remember the story. The day I coincidentally walked by one of my front office workers and heard a phone conversation with a potential new client go this way. And remember, I can only hear her side of the conversation. And I hear, oh, you're out of network. Well, it's really expensive to come here when you're out of network with that insurance carrier.
Oh
So I
man.
recommend you call someone that's in network. Click. And I kept walking, and to this day, I'm like, I still wonder if I really heard what I think I heard, but I did. And it was that day when it was like, oh my gosh, what kinds of conversations are we having with people on the phone? We were hiring front office people, great, good people, great with the people in front of them, one on one. Mrs. Jones walks in the office, awesome, but we weren't doing anything with their phone answering. No training, no listening, no anything, no education, no anything. And that's when that thought really started. And I worked on that before we even started tracking calls.
Right. So what could have they done better right then? Like, what's one thing they could have done better right then? That could have been a new patient for you, right?
Correct. So there's $1,000 in revenue out the door without even a chance of happening.
Yeah.
And I would argue, Carl, also just to clarify, if that person is on the phone with my front office person, they should be a patient scheduling in the office. So by saying a patient that calls to ask, do you take my Blue Cross insurance? And you say no and hang up, by saying, well, that wasn't a potential new patient, that's completely wrong.
Yeah.
Because that was a new patient. And I can prove that. I can prove that in my own practice. I can prove that in other people's practices. Just to clarify, so any of those calls is a lost new patient if you hang up the phone without scheduling. One thing she could have done differently was she had all the information, because I guarantee you she had already written it down to call her back with that, is have a conversation about the doctor who referred her. Have a conversation about the friend that referred her. Have a conversation about the value that coming to our practice will bring to her, and patient make a choice of if that value is worth the price that they have to put on it. So just by having a conversation, so let's say it's Dr. Smith. Oh yeah, my doctor's Dr. Smith. Oh, if we see a handful of Dr. Smith patients a month, then you can say, oh, we see a lot of Dr. Smith patients, and just start a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talk about what the customer cares about or the patient cares about, talk about their pain. I could see how that would be a big difference rather than just going straight to insurance, which nobody likes to talk about insurance.
Yeah, it's funny if you that's a hundred that's a great statement. You're exactly right. No one wants to talk about insurance, so if you engage them in the other things, you're going to learn quickly what they value.
Yep.
And then if you have something to offer them, you can share that with them. If you don't, then we help them find the right place. And so, yeah, it's got to be. No one wants to talk about insurance, so why call them back and just talk about the freaking insurance?
Yeah.
That's a big mistake.
So so you heard this happen at your practice. You had somebody answer the phone and say, "No, we don't take that. It's really expensive for you to come here." Click, goodbye. How did that progress from there?
Uh, Great question. Where it progressed, even before we started measuring the calls, well, that probably all came about the same time. We at least started tracking the calls because what that led to was we've got to find out how many, because all of a sudden it struck me that was a patient we could have scheduled. Where are they? We had them tracked in the system, and we didn't. So that started there. And then it turned into making sure that everybody from top to bottom understood the value that we bring to patients. So that thing I was just telling you about. So that everybody understood how to have a conversation and what to have a conversation about.
Right.
That's what flowed out of it.
Cool. And then at what point did you decide to start writing stuff down?
That probably came about, I'd say, that conversation I originally heard was probably now it was probably about 7, 8 years ago. I would say we really started tracking things about. We probably started writing it down about 5 years ago, but really serious to the point that we are now, only 4 years ago.
Okay.
And,
So,
and that call log has evolved.
gotcha. So you started tracking those basic things. What have you learned by looking at that data coming in?
Oh boy, that's the big question. Um, the first iteration of my call log did not have a column called "Who do we thank for sending you to us?"
Mm-hmm.
It only had a column that said "Who referred you."
Yeah.
That the difference between those two columns, if you take that information right there and put that on a call log, that will make your marketing program more efficient and therefore give you a bigger ROI on your marketing plan. That simple thing. Everybody nods their heads and say, "Yeah, I do that." But when you really break it down, do you do that? We were just marketing to the people who signed the referral, and it wasn't correct. We find out many times a doctor signs a referral, and I found out about you from my friend Joe Smith. Joe Smith is the one that needs the big thank you, and then the doctor who signed the referral needs an introduction to my clinic.
Right. So so the difference between the two columns is, yeah, there could be a referring doctor, but they could have really heard about you through a friend or, through a campaign you did, a letter you sent out, or a commercial even.
Yeah, great point. So a lot of people, most everybody I know, does community programs, right?
Yep.
You're doing something in the community. You're giving free talks. You do something with a running program. I mean, we can name thousands of things, and it's awesome to see everybody out there. Then how do you measure that return on investment? You gave your time, you gave money, you gave some of your staff members time, maybe you gave people vacation time. How do you measure the return on that? That second column, then, when someone calls in to schedule, yeah, Dr. So and so gave me the sign my referral. Oh, well, who can we thank for sending you guys? Oh, actually, I was at your last running event.
Uh-huh.
That gets tracked on the call log, and now you know that running event is generating at least one patient, then
Right.
you get to see how often do you want to be involved in this community. We've given up on some community events because there's been no return on it. And I'm talking about I'm not just saying
Yeah. So, okay, so you're taking calls, and the people are writing down the patient's name. They're writing down who referred them, how they really heard about you, and from that, you're able to kind of see, you know, what marketing efforts are actually bringing in new patients and which ones are not. Correct?
correct. And what that has caused us to do more than anything else, and is the hardest thing to do, is stop marketing to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Stop marketing to some providers again. Stop some community projects we were involved in. So it told us where not to spend our time also.
Yep.
You look 1 month, okay, 2 months, a quarter, you've been spending time going by the doctor's office, trying to meet people in the office, and a quarter later, you spend time and money on them. You say, you know what? They can get the direct mail, they can do this and that, but we're not going to make them. We have three levels of providers. We're not going to make them a top tier level provider and treat them the same way we do the other people who send us patients.
Well, what are the three levels of providers? Like, how do you define that?
Um, you anybody you can call them whatever you want. We call them A, B, and C providers, and it's based on number of referrals per month,
Gotcha.
and we categorize that. So
Okay.
the A are the top providers.
Gotcha. So from this data, you can essentially see what marketing is working and what's bringing in new patients and what's not working. So effectively, if you stop doing what's not working and do spend that money on what is working, you're going to bring in more new patients. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. So you started down another rabbit hole that I love to talk about too, which is a schedule ready referral. If
Okay.
you take some of that money that wasn't working before, like you just said,
Mm-hmm.
put it into some of those people that you see from that second column are actually using you by name,
Mm-hmm.
that person is calling your office and is already prepped to schedule. The amount of work you have to do, the conversation you have to do, has already been had before they even call the office. That right there is the magic, to have that schedule ready before.
Right.
And
Yeah. So that's awesome.
the ROI on that dollar is great.
Yeah.
You just stop the program and put it into that doctor.
Do you ever? This is kind of. I've never thought of this before, but have you ever looked at it in a way to find the actual like type of patient that you want to see, like your ideal patient?
Yeah, that's interesting. The way we work is we more identify. That's a good question, because we identify the ideal provider.
Mm-hmm.
Our
Gotcha.
leverage point, and a lot of people watching this video are in direct access states and market directly to the public.
Yeah.
California is not
California is not.
license,
Yeah. Gotcha.
and still the providers are a huge leverage point, regardless if you're in a direct access state or not. As an ortho doc who's going to see 40 or 50 people today, send half of them to physical therapy. So one person is going to see 25 people that could potentially be your patients. So what we've done is we've identified the ideal provider. And again, if they really believe in us, and we've spent our time and our energy sharing our value with him, he's sharing it with the patient sitting across from him or her. And then by the time that patient calls our office, whether they're in network, out of network, no insurance, cash paid, whatever, they're going to schedule with us. And we see it all the time. I have more out of network people now than I ever have.
That's great. So, okay, so you're tracking the calls, and we got to talking about where your patients are coming from, and we kind of got to talking about the referral, or not the referral, the conversion rate of calls to new patients being, on average 75%. What other things have you done to try to improve that number, and what can be done? Like, what's possible?
That last column this comes in.
Okay.
I'm trying to think when I actually started measuring this. I do not remember, to be honest, but it's probably been only about 3 years. The reason not scheduled call.
Gotcha.
And what we did was that was an open call, and we just typed in whatever the person told you.
Okay.
After about a year or two, we realized everything fell into three categories. There was only three reasons basically people didn't schedule. So we now have a drop-down menu, and you can just choose one of the three. What that does then, Carl, to answer that question, that then tells me where I have to spend my time and energy, and that is already tipping me off to what conversations I have to have with some of the providers, or even better, it tells me what conversations I need to have with people that call in who
Yeah.
start to lean towards one of those excuses.
Gotcha.
So that really shapes the conversation between my front office staff, and I use that as training, and that new patient who says, well, that's a lot of money. And my staff knows to go down a certain path if they hear that, because we've tracked that.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So you're basically in, I don't know, real sales training, learning to track what the objections are, and that's basically what reason not scheduled is the objections. So
Yes.
in the conversation, you can kind of train your staff to kind of know what those objections are and how to handle them, and bring it up front, and really affect that conversion rate.
You know what's funny, Carl? Yeah, you mentioned the front office dealing with those objectives. You said no one wants to talk about insurance earlier.
No, I don't. I don't want to talk about insurance.
You know who else doesn't want to talk about insurance? Anybody's front office, because
Yeah.
it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You ought to see the look on some of my staff's face when they pull up some of these plans before they even call people back, because they know, oh my God, that's horrible coverage. I'm going to have a horrible conversation. It's like, no, you're not. You're going to give them the benefits, and you're going to talk about the value that we bring, and that patient has a choice, right? So even my staff will start to, they already start to empathize, and sometimes too much, with that person on the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
We have to give the patients a chance to choose.
Yeah.
What we have found out, if the patient is given the chance to choose, they will spend $150 a visit. They'll spend $75 a visit. We have payment plans in place. So we know that's a reason people don't schedule. So we've set up certain conditions that will allow people to say, I can't afford it, to afford it. Hey, we got a payment plan. Hey,
Yeah.
we can do this. Hey, we can do that. Hey, we're going to get you out quicker. And by the way, I do have that. We're going to get you out quicker.
Yeah.
So the difference between $175 visits with, someone else that's in network may be a moot point.
Cool. That's awesome. So it's so simple. That's the best thing about it. Like, this isn't, it's not rocket science. Anybody can do it. They can start, today. They can take an Excel spreadsheet, or a Google Doc, they can throw it up and talk to their front desk and say, anybody who answers the phone, type in their name, type in the referral source, type in the where they really came from, or I forget how you worded it exactly, and then the reason they did not schedule. And from that, let's talk about the data a little bit. Like, what else can you get from that? You look at the conversion rate, like how many people didn't schedule, and you said that's like 75%. And I guess you can like break down in a any kind of chart that you might want to see where people are really coming from as well.
So then we take that 25%,
Yep.
break that down
Yep.
into those three categories.
Yeah.
Yes. Then I also track referrals, who sign the referrals. So I track that data.
Okay.
Because I use that as a touch point. Now we go out, we either call, we email, or we go in physically to that office. Hey, we got one of your patients. Just want to let you know, I'm Jerry from San Francisco Spine. We're happy to take care of your patients, and turn around and walk out.
And
No hard sell, no send me more patients,
yeah.
no nothing. Then the magic again is that column. How did you come about? Who can we thank for recommending us?
Oh, okay.
and then reach out to them. Why did you recommend it? I use it to gather more data. Why did you
Oh.
recommend it? What did you find? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? So I use that to collect more data.
So if you can you give an example of like a time you went out and asked that question and what did that do for you asking that question? Or what can it do for you?
Not to offend a lot of people out there. We all believe that our magical clinical skills are the end all be all marketing program. And I will leave it at this. Unfortunately, they are not. And the people who leave it up to that don't thrive, and they create jobs for themselves, and they have a difficult time. I'm here to say that those clinical skills ultimately makes the perfect relationship with someone. Those clinical skills do not get people in the door. So what I learned from those conversations, Carl, is what information I need to share to get people to call my office, or I build my value proposition out of it. Jerry, you had the best front office people I've ever met in healthcare. I literally heard that about 2 weeks ago. And then when I got here, my PT came up and greeted me in the waiting area, right? Tell me the best thing about your experience with us, right? 12 visits later, those are the two things. So I'm not going to go out and market my clinical skills to people. I'm going to tell them we have people our people respect you. Our people want to talk to you. Our people answer the phone, right? Our people want to engage you and learn more about you. They want to hear what you want to achieve. Those are
Mm-hmm.
the things I market after this conversation. So I learned what is my value.
Yeah.
What's the value I share with the public.
That's awesome. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I mean, somebody could not even get better and still recommend you. Um,
Yeah, and those I had those people, and I'll never forget the first time I ever saw someone's name on the log that I had treated that I knew didn't get better. It scrambled my brain. What the hell are they recommending? Why would someone who didn't get better recommend someone? Yeah, it was so confusing, and it was. It was just about someone who listened. It was about engaging. It was about empathy. It was about answering the phone.
mhm. Got it. That's awesome. So let's talk about numbers for a second again. So if somebody's not tracking this at all, and then they start tracking it, and they're not paying attention to the way the script works at the front desk at all. What do you think is a like realistic improvement that somebody could make by just doing this step, by recording those things that you said, and um, you know, trying to just improve that conversation? What's realistic if they're at 70% or 75%?
I like that. I'm not good at math. Business partnership. So I'd rather say, let's say you have 100 calls.
Yeah. Okay.
So you have 100 calls, and I alluded to this earlier. I will damn near guarantee 99.9% certainty if you just sat at the front one day and changed the conversation that you will see two new patients. And actually, when I say two new patients, if you're getting 100 calls a month, I would argue you'll get two new patients next week, and then probably the week after. So through the month, you'll probably get 4 to 6 new patients.
So that's
So you'll get a 4% improvement in
wow.
that month, 4 to 6.
Which
And
could be if they're seeing 100 patients, yeah.
you can't talk, and I know I keep saying that, but I don't want people to sit there and think you can't do that for me. If you're not measuring, you have to start measuring now.
So let's talk about that. What would people's objections be to measuring, do you think? So we can try to clear that and help people get started with this.
Well,
Like the time, it's going to take too much time, or
yeah, I think there's a little resistance. You don't want to know what business you're losing. I mean,
mm,
that's the worst thing.
yeah,
And even I, after 5 years, I hate looking at that call log and then periodically seeing some of the providers drop off. I sit
yeah.
there thinking, what did I do wrong? So there's that part. There is a time component. And by the way, if you've had someone sitting at the front desk for a few years, they may be resistant to change, and you may not want to try to change what they're doing because you know there's going to be too much pushback. So the key is to make this call log, which we did the first time, the columns across. If you didn't know it and you just wrote, asked the question, ROTE, wrote repetition on it, it should flow like a conversation. So make it easy for your front office people to complete this thing and to do it properly.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And
So,
it take, and let's face it, that's the one ask that you never get back. So you got to make time.
yeah, you got to make time for it. But I mean, how much extra time is it going to take? They're already talking on the phone. They can't really multitask any more than that. If all they have to do is write down these four things in those cells during each call, um, and management or whoever has to look at it and digest that, doesn't seem like too much to ask for potentially if you're seeing 100 new patients a month, $4,000 more a month, or whatever it comes to if you increase by 4%, right?
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
That's
and
huge.
for some of us, $4,000 a month that pays for your front office person, right?
Wow.
You just covered the salary of your front office person, right?
Yep.
Or more so. Here's something else, Carl, to think about. If your front office is engaging someone in a conversation before they walk in the office, they've learned something about them. The patient
Oh
coming
yeah.
in has
Yeah.
learned something about your front office and your practice, and it makes it far more comfortable for everybody when they come in that first time. You already feel like you know someone. I don't know of anybody who doesn't want to feel like they know someone walking in the door the first day, especially the patient. Patient's in pain. You can't do what you want to do. It's a new experience. You don't know what physical therapy is. You've never been in the office. And you walk in the door and you're like, oh, you're Sarah. Oh, that's great to finally put a face, a face to the voice, right? And have that conversation from day one. I mean, the only thing that's going to set us off day in and day out and consistently is customer service. So it's a huge customer service component.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So, yeah, let's wrap this up. So if somebody were to just get started today, let's make it really easy for them. What would you suggest that they do today? They're doing nothing.
Pull up Google Docs, create about 6 columns. Start with the date. So there'll be a column for date, the person's initials who took the call, the potential patient's name, birthday, phone number, who signed your referral, who do we thank, who can we thank for referring you to us, and then if they don't schedule, fill in the reason. That's it.
Gotcha.
That's it. And you can create that. I mean, you can pull up an Google sheet and then take it to your front office and say, hey, while you're on the phone with this patient, fill this data in.
Awesome. That sounds great. So yeah, let's. Do you have any other parting advice for people before we wrap up?
It's kind of the same thing I started with. If you're measuring it, you can change it and you can improve it. And if you're not measuring it or you're not measuring it completely, you can't make a change.
Yeah.
So start measuring every single call that comes in the office, even the person who says, I'm calling to see if you take Blue Cross insurance, because that person right there is a huge loss opportunity.
Right. This is great. This has been amazing, Jerry. Thanks so much. Where can people find you if they want to contact you?
My email is jerry@sfsspt.com. You can find me on Twitter at Jerry_Durham PT. And you can call my cell phone, 415-509-38986. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. I will put all of that in the notes below the video so people can get to it and they can contact you. And obviously, we went over just the very tip of the iceberg here today. So if people are interested and they like this, let us know, and we will maybe continue and do another entire interview on the conversation itself, and maybe get more into the data. Sound
Yeah,
good?
you data you got to collect, and you got to collect the data. You got to be measuring KPIs. You got to do it. If you want to make that practice successful and you want to grow, you got to be collecting all this data and the KPIs.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jerry.